What's up guys, RedRaven here. Gonna do another tutorial for you guys, and this one is going to be just tips and tricks on the most commonly used mixer effects. So let's get started. Now, it is 3 o'clock in the morning here, so excuse me if you can hear a lot of the fan noise in the background from my computer and stuff. I do have the gain on my microphone turned up quite a bit. I do have a noise gate on it, so hopefully that gets rid of most of it for you guys. But yeah, I gotta talk quietly so that I can record this without pissing off my sister, my baby nephew, and my mother. So the effects I'm going to cover in this would be a compressor, a reverb, and a delay. Now you might think that those are three things that you already know, but I'm going to try to show you some tips and tricks and maybe some different ways to use a few of these things. So I've just got a 3X OSC running the default sound here. And let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to cover is a compressor. Now I know I've already done a tutorial on compressors, but let's be honest, it sucked. The video quality is shit, and back then I stumbled across my words a lot. I used a lot back then, so I'm going to redo it and hopefully it'll come out better this time. So the way a compressor works is it reads it analyzes your audio, and it takes the peaks of your audio and turns them down so that there's less of a gap between your lowest volume and your highest volume on a particular sound. And the way it does this is with a few different parameters. You've got your threshold, your ratio, your attack, your release, and your gain. Those are the 5 things that every compressor will have. Fruity Loops happens to have an additional parameter where you can choose between a few different types of compression. I'm not going to really cover that today because, to be honest, it's not super important to compressors. You can mess with it and learn about it if you'd like, but I'm not going to cover that. So the most important, one of the most important things about the compressor is the threshold knob. And what this knob does is it sets the level at which any sound above that level will be turned down, and the ratio dictates how much it will be turned down. The attack determines how fast the compressor will react to a sound going above the threshold, and the release is how long after there is no signal going above the threshold that the compressor turns off. So if I set the threshold at, let's say, -25, turn the attack down to 0 so that you can really hear this, and we'll turn the ratio up to 12 to 1 about, so that you guys can really hear this. Now if I play a quiet note below the threshold, it doesn't do anything. But now if I really jam on the key, you see it's not going above my threshold dB level, and that's what a compressor does. If I adjust the threshold, you see that I have more dynamic range. And that's really all there is to a compressor. So remember, the most important things to know about the compressor are: the threshold is the level at which an audio signal going above that dB level will be turned down. The ratio is the amount that it will be turned down. The attack is how fast it reacts to the sound going above the threshold, and the release is how long after the sound is below the threshold that the compressor will kick off. And that's it on compressors. That's it. The gain knob is only there because when you compress something and you're turning down the loudest peaks, you obviously lose volume, so the gain knob is there to compensate for that and turn your sound back up so that you have a nice even sound. So that's compressors. Now on to reverb. Now I'm going to be using a Fruity Reverb 2 for this, but basically any reverb unit will have the same basic controls that I'm going to cover. So Fruity Reverb 2 has a few knobs that you want to pay attention to. First of all, you have the pre-delay knob, which is located here on Fruity Reverb 2, and what that is how how much of a delay between the input audio and when you actually begin to hear the reverb. Okay? And the size knob, now that's how big the room that the reverb is going to try to simulate. Okay? You have the diffusion knob, and that's how square or round your room is. Obviously, in a square room, the reflections are a bit awkward, and the reverb will sound a little different. And in a circular room, the reverbs will be completely even and more balanced. Okay? And then you have the decay time, and that's obviously how long the reverb will decay. You have the crossover, which doesn't really matter except when you're messing with the high dampening. And the dampening is the high frequencies at which they'll be turned down so that they don't come through as much. Okay. Now the crossover is actually, I got it wrong, it's for the bass boost. It's so that it dictates what's considered bass and what's not. Okay? So you have a few knobs over here. You have your stereo separation, you've got your dry, you've got your early reflection level, and you've got your wet. Now I've already done a tutorial on how to use a reverb unit to simulate Native Instruments Massive's effects dimension expander, and you just use a very short delay and a very short decay, and it kind of adds more width to your sound without actually sounding like a reverb. So if I play a sound right now with the stock settings, alright, you hear it sounds like a delay, or a reverb, sorry. If I turn the decay down to like 0.4 or 0.3 seconds, I go ahead and turn the wet volume up for you. You hear it sounds like a bigger sound, but it doesn't really sound like a reverb because there's not a huge tail on it. Alright, and if you mess with the high cut and the low cut, which just basically allows you to tell the reverb unit which sounds to actually apply reverb to, or which frequencies to apply reverb to, you can kind of get different effects with this dimension expander type of thing. Now another cool thing you can do with this dimension expander technique is you can turn your decay down to 0.1 seconds and then just turn your pre-delay up. And it gives you pretty much the same effect. And then if you combine that with like a 0.4 or 0.3 second decay, you can hear how that sounds. And the early reflection is just that. It's reflections before your pre-delay time, and that basically covers everything about a reverb unit that you need to know. So on to a delay unit. Now there's some pretty interesting things you can do with a delay unit. They're very, very simple really. You have your input volume and pan on Fruity Delay 2. You have your feedback type. You've got normal, inverted, and ping pong. You have your feedback volume, your feedback low pass cutoff, and you have your delay time and stereo offset, and then your dry volume. So pretty much everybody knows how to use the delay in a standard way. So if I just press a sound, you get that, dub type delay. And if you turn this, you can go up to like a different beat. And if you mess with the cutoff, alright. Now here's a pretty interesting thing you can do with the delay unit. If you set your time down to like very, very small amount, like 0.08 or something, and then you very slightly tweak it, you get kind of a phase modulation effect. And with a sine wave, it's kind of choppy, but if you use it on like a metallic bass or something like that, you can get some pretty crazy sounds doing that. And if you mess with your cutoff and everything, and let me actually go ahead and make this a saw wave, and we'll detune a few of them here so you can kind of hear the effect better. Alright, now if you combine that with the dimension expander effect, you get a pretty crazy sound going. So I'll go ahead and do that for you guys. I'll put the dimension expander after the delay. And then let me bring my delay up so that I can modulate it. And there you go. That's the basics on how to use the most commonly used mixer effects. If you liked this tutorial, please click the donation link that will be listed in the description box for this video. It is very much appreciated, as it does take quite a bit of time to edit these videos and record them, since my computer processor is not good at all. This is RedRaven, peace and out, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial.